right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Conrad with AIM Transportation. Transportation Solutions. Thank you for joining us. As you know, we're here today to talk about the CVSA's upcoming Operation Safe Driver Week, which will run from July 7th through the 13th this year. Now, I'm going to assume that most everyone on this call is probably somewhat familiar with this annual event, but essentially during these 7 days, law enforcement will be out in full force with a heavier than normal presence, keeping an extra watchful eye out for reckless driving behaviors such as speeding and distracted driving. Now, this is always a great time to really refocus your driver's priorities on safe driving. And that's not to say that they're not, but it's easy for all of us to fall into bad habits, which in a lot of cases, we may not even be aware we're doing. And really, that's what Operation Safe Driver Week is all about, bringing safe, focused driving back to the forefront. And while the long-term effects of Operation Safe Driver Week on the industry and the roads that we share are valuable, it presents challenges for the trucking industry in the short term. For example, increased inspections and enforcement can lead to temporary disruptions and added stress for drivers. And this is why refocusing on safe driving habits and having conversations now with your drivers about what to expect during and how to prepare for Operation Safe Driver Week is important and extremely advantageous. And to help with those conversations, our host and expert, AIM Regional Safety Manager John Rugarber, is here to cover what to expect during Operation Safe Driver Week, this year's focus, and how to get ready. But before John gets into the matter at hand, I just want to provide some quick information on AIM. I see that we have several of our valued customers online, and I want to say thank you. We appreciate you, and we're happy to have you on the call today. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with us, AIM Transportation Solutions is a family-owned and operated company, and we offer full-service truck leasing, commercial truck rentals, dedicated contract carriage, maintenance programs, including professional shop management, used truck sales, and freight brokerage. Now, if you if you can't remember all that, all I could say is if you have a transportation arm of your business, we can be a valuable resource and partner to you. We are the Commercial Carrier Journal's 2024 Innovator of the Year. We're number 25 on Transport Topics' Top 50 Dedicated Contract Carriers list. We're on Newsweek's 2023 list of top 100 most loved workplaces in America, and we were just recently recertified as a 2024 most loved workplace by the Best Practices Institute. And really, I say all this to say that AIM is where the resources and capabilities of a large corporation meet the high level of care and personalized service you would expect from a family-owned business like ours. So if you want to hear more about any of our services or anything else about AIM, please reach out to me after today's session. I'd be more than happy to help. Everyone should have my email address from the webinar invites that went out. And so, all right, that's my spiel. So let's go ahead and dive into Operation Safe Driver Week. If you have any questions during today's session, John will answer those following his presentation. So please hang on to those questions until the end when we open up the floor for our Q&A. And with that, John, if you are ready, sir, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, Conrad. I really appreciate that introduction. I want to start off by saying thank you to Conrad and Jessica and also AIM itself for allowing me to present these webinar series that we've been doing now for going on 2 years, I think. So today's focus is going to be on Operation Safe Driver, and Conrad mentioned that already. This is going to occur from July 7th through the 13th. So it's going to begin on Sunday morning at 001, early in the morning on Sunday, and it's going to continue until midnight on Saturday the 13th. So this will be a week-long operation. Just to let you know again, my name is John Rugarber. I'm a regional safety manager with AIM. My email is down below there on that cover sheet, jrugarber@aimntls.com. Feel free to reach out, email me if you'd like, if you have any questions after this webinar, or any questions even not pertaining to this particular webinar, but any of the ones we have done or that we're going to do in the future. We do have something coming up. Brake Safety Week is actually occurring. Let's see, it looks like August 25th through the 31st. So we will be doing something probably the first week in August or so. We're going to be doing something on that. And Conrad and I put our heads together, and we're also going to come up with a year-end compilation type of series and maybe focus on some things that are new in the industry that people may not be aware of. So we got those two coming up, and we're looking forward to those. So again, thank you for everybody being on this. And let's get started. We'll take a look and see where we're going to go from here. All right, so probably the big question, and no, this isn't shopping for Target, but it is, why are they targeting drivers? What is the whole purpose of this event that CVSA puts on a regular basis? They began it in 2007, this Operation Safe Driver, so it's been going on for quite a while. And a lot of people may just have a question, why are they targeting driver? What's the big deal? Well, let's look at some statistics real quick, and we'll kind of get a feel for that. So more than 370,000 people have died in transportation incidents over the last decade, and that's from 2011 through 20 in the United States. And more than 350,000 have died on the roads. So I know, and I'm one of them, that I'm not a big flyer per se. I'd prefer not to fly. But the reality is, if you go over here into this pie section, you'll see that the air transportation fatalities only encompass about 1.1% of fatalities. It gets even smaller if you move down into transit, public bus systems, probably, possibly school buses. They don't identify that portion, but you're looking at 0.7%. Very, very small amount. Pipeline gets even smaller, 0.3%. You move into railroad, you're looking at basically a 2% fatality rate. And that's probably more railroad crossings and things of those natures, more so than large railroad accidents. And then you get into water, where you have probably recreational boating, I would imagine. Any incidents of large ships going down probably are not that great any longer, but the recreational part is a part of that. And then you move over to the roadway, and that is encompassing about 94.2% of fatalities occurred. That's the big push. That's why they're targeting drivers, because basically accidents are caused by drivers the majority of the time. Not to say that there aren't mechanical issues, but drivers in and of itself are really the major cause of accidents on the roadway. From the 2023 statistics pulled off of last year's event, there were 40,990, so almost 41,000 fatalities, and that averages out to about 112 a day. So that being the case, if you extrapolate that out even further, in another 10 years, you're looking at almost 410,000 if you just want to run those numbers and multiply it by 10. So that's really the biggest reason that they're going to focus on the drivers, is because of this particular number, that 94.2% that you're looking at over in this big pie portion over here. And this information was pulled from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, in case anybody would like to go in and look any further for some more information. The next slide. So really it comes down to, what did the driver do and what didn't he do that would possibly cause this end result of an accident? So you want to look at a driver and say, what did he do? Well, he could be speeding. He could be distracted by the use of the cell phone. There could be a number of different reasons that the driver did do something that caused a particular accident. What didn't he do? Maybe the driver wasn't aiming high and steering, for example. And we'll pull one of those from the Smith system, those 5 keys of the Smith system, who, if any of you out there use their system, it's a great system. We currently use it. Can't say enough about it. I was and still am an instructor within the Smith system for AIM. So aim high and steering, were they looking further ahead? Were they looking out that quarter of a mile at highway speeds? Were they getting the big picture? Did they see what was going on around them? You want to make sure that you keep your eyes moving at all times. Keep your eyes moving. You want to make sure you look in your mirrors every 5 to 8 seconds. Some guys stare ahead. They never look in their mirrors until they decide to make a lane change or something draws their attention. So really, you don't want to get focused on that view right in front of you. Leave yourself an out. That's a huge one. Usually for any driver trainers that might be on this call, or any companies who employ driver trainers within their system, what are you going to do if something happens, is a constant question that I would ask when I was out with our drivers. We'd be driving down the road. I'd see something starting to form, maybe to the side of us or in front of us, and I'd ask our driver, what would you do if this vehicle in front of you unexpectedly slammed on his brakes? A deer ran out in front of us. And it's funny the responses you get, and you could tell by the delay in response that they weren't really even thinking about what they would do if something were to occur. And this really parlays itself into your own personal driving too. Just driving your own car to and from work or going on vacation or just driving in general. Look, think to yourself, what would I do if something occurred? So you're proactive instead of reactive when you're driving a vehicle. So let's look at the focus and what the focus is going to be this year within this particular CVSA event. So what they're going to focus on is it's going to be on reckless driving, and it's going to be on careless driving and or dangerous driving. There are going to be two definitions coming up to differentiate between the reckless and the careless and dangerous. So let me click on that, and we're going to see what the definition of reckless driving comes up as. All right, so the actual definition, now this is under FMCSR's Table 2, 38351. So the definition of reckless driving is going to be a willful or wanton disregard for the safety of persons or property. You can go on YouTube. There's hundreds of videos of this particular definition. It usually involves criminal activity and a person trying to run away from the law enforcement officers, and the chase is on. I think it's become a sport in California, maybe Texas, some of those places out there out west where they can go for miles. But basically, it's just driving with total disregard for people or property. So that would be the reckless driving. Now, under the careless or dangerous driving, that definition is a little less severe. So that definition is operating a vehicle without due care and attention or reasonable consideration for other motorists or people on the roadway. So it's a little less severe of a definition, and chances are, if a driver was cited for this, to cite the driver, and we're going to see it in this next slide, it falls under a serious violation. So hopefully the officer would be able to, be a little, to give a little leeway, because knowing that if he were to write a reckless driving ticket, that's going to seriously impact a commercial motor vehicle driver's employment at the least. Not to say that there are other issues too, but so your chances are getting that careless driving and or dangerous driving would be much greater than getting the reckless driving. The careless driving or dangerous, care and attention, you're on the cell phone, you're texting while you're driving, things of that nature, just more or less you're not paying attention, is where that careless driving and or dangerous driving could possibly come into play. Now this next slide is going to have quite a bit of information. I pulled this as an excerpt from the actual Table 2, 38351 up in that left-hand corner, and that's a list of the serious violations. Table 1 under 38351 is going to be the major offenses, and that has to do with alcohol, driving, getting a felony conviction, under doing a felony, trafficking, human trafficking, drug use, distribution, manufacturing, things of that nature. That's going to be Table 1. But this under Table 2, so there you see number 2 down here, bottom line, driving recklessly as defined by state or local law regulation, and then the remainder of that earlier definition. So here's where the second conviction for that violation within a 3-year period, the CDL holder must be disqualified from operating a commercial motor vehicle for 60 days. So you say to yourself, well, that's fine. I don't drive like that when I drive the truck, but I do drive a little recklessly when I drive my car. Well, that's where the second one comes in here. So a second conviction with a non-commercial motor vehicle, and then you're going to fall under the same criteria here and the same suspension period or disqualification period of 60 days. And for a third or subsequent conviction, you're looking at 120 days. And then obviously in your non-commercial motor vehicle, you're looking at 120 days. Being that we're on the commercial vehicle side of it, I would venture to say that most drivers won't have a job probably after the second conviction, let alone the third. But again, I've touted education is a big thing throughout all these webinars, educating our drivers. And it really couldn't do any harm to educate the drivers and let him know what what happens if you get convicted. A lot of drivers just don't know. They're not paying attention. They get a first conviction, but they don't even know that a second conviction could risk having their license disqualified for 60 days. So it really would behoove companies to bring up in safety meetings or memos or however you talk to your drivers throughout the course of the day or their employment with you, is let them know about these little things so that they be more apt to maybe pay attention and change their habits as they're driving. All right, the next slide. I talked to Conrad yesterday. We were kind of reviewing what we were going to do today, and I had put this in here, and it's a really nice little uh, interactive map of the United States in different areas. And the link here off to the left is the link that you could use if you'd like to link to that. And it'll bring you up to a really informative area of the Department of Transportation. And that's why I put the logo in here. We tried to use it yesterday, and the latency with the internet connections and everything, it just was taking too long, and I didn't feel that it was going to be the proper thing to use. And I almost deleted the slide, and then I thought, well, let me pass on the information because some people may find this little link over here uh, very helpful. So if you'd like to link on it, feel free, take that. It's probably not, I don't know if it'll work off the PowerPoint when we send this PowerPoint after the presentation, but if not, just copy and paste that link, and that will take you there if you'd like any further information. These next two slides are going to be screenshots I took of that, and I'll talk about that. For example, this next one. This is going to the hotspots. So you can see down here, now this is 17 through 21, and you can see a high hotspot. And it's not surprising. We've seen them in San Francisco, the surrounding areas, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Down here, you probably have the run between Tucson and Phoenix, for example. Dallas, a big hotspot down in Houston, that southeastern Texas area. Again, Atlanta, you're looking at parts of South Carolina, northern Georgia. Pretty much 3/4 of Florida is a high fatality crash rate from 2017 to 21. And then, not surprisingly, that 95 corridor for sure along the upper New York all the way down into the DC, Washington area is just, huge hotspots for high fatal crashes. And then you have some softer areas up here, Seattle, Denver, St. Louis, this area down here, Cincinnati-ish, Kentucky, northern Kentucky areas. So just a little heat map of the location of where some hotspots are throughout the country. The next slide is going to bring up pretty much the same thing, except they broke it into counties. So, for example, since 2017, the average U.S. county experienced 61 roadway fatalities. And then if you go over here, you'll see where the dark brown is the high, down into the green area, bluish green is no fatality. So again, this kind of corresponds with the previous map you could see up in that Seattle area. Now they did include this more or less in Northern California. All of that area down in here, Los Angeles and east, over to Vegas, got Phoenix, got Tucson down here. Those are all going to be high fatality concentration levels. Again, Denver. And then you have small patches of these areas here. That would probably be Salt Lake, possibly. Not listed. I'm thinking it'd be like that Salt Lake area for this one. And then small pockets within that Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland. Probably got Pittsburgh over here. Again, Florida. And then, which wasn't added in the previous one, was that southern I-10 area down through Alabama, Mississippi, into Texas, and then back into Houston to Dallas. So again, just kind of two screenshots of what that link takes you onto, but there is some more information that some people may really be interested in. It's an interesting link to go to. All right, so let's talk about some of these. We got 5 here. 2 of them are going to be similar, but we got 5 that are really the heavy hitters. And off of that 380, 351, so we're looking at speeding in that upper left-hand corner. And let's look at, that falls under number 1 in terms of speeding. And for the series, it's going to be over 15 miles an hour. So there are different criteria, especially for the CSA rankings. It's 4 to 7, 7 to 11, and then 11 to 15. Or I'm sorry, 5 to 10, 11 to 14, and 15 and over. And that corresponds with a CSA ranking of 4, 7, and 10 points for the reckless driving. So under table 2, 351, speeding anything over 15 is going to be that. And then we have tailgating. Now, the tailgating thing, that falls into number 4 under the serious violations. But keep in mind, tailgating, that's basically following too close. And for every person on this call, well, maybe not this call because we're all involved in transportation, but the average person who drives, for every person you ask, will probably have a different idea of what a good following distance is. Anywhere from 1 second to who knows what. AIM recommends a 6-second following distance for our drivers and our vehicles. It does seem like a lot until the last words out of your mouth are, I thought I could stop before you hit the rear of the vehicle in front of you. So tailgating is a huge thing. Following distance is huge. It just allows you so much more time and preparation if something were to occur. I know in Georgia specifically, they use LiDAR in their radar. So the officer clip, in fact, I can remember one of our DOT inspections, it specifically noted that we are 0.8 of a second behind the vehicle in front of us. That is a difficult one to fight if you have to take that to court, because that officer is going to pull that sheet up describing that based on that LiDAR reading, you were 0.8 seconds. It isn't a matter of he thought, he said, I said. You know, the officer pulls up the sheet similar to the radar. The radar gun says you were doing this. Pretty much a shut and close case. So really, you know, stress to your drivers that 6 seconds at a commercial motor vehicle size is really what you need to do, at least at a minimum. And that increases as the weather or road conditions deteriorate. Let's move down into improper passing down here in the left-hand corner. Again, under 351, that's going to be number 3. So improper passing, double yellow. Obviously, we can't pass over that. Solid yellow on your line. Can't pass over that. Passing a school bus that stopped on the side of the road, dependent upon the rules and how the, you know, what that looks like, that could be improper passing. That could be considered a serious violation under 380, 351. So again, keep in mind there's 10 of those total. Not all of those are on here. We have running lights and signs. 351, that's number 5. A yellow light does not mean speed up. Some drivers have a tendency that light turns yellow and they speed up to try to get through the yellow light. One of the more dangerous accidents that occur are intersection accidents. Somebody's waiting for the light to turn green. The minute it turns green, they take off and they don't look. I'm pretty sure UPS has got a policy of when that light turns, their drivers are taught to take a second, look left, look right, make sure traffic isn't moving. Also, wait until the vehicle in front of you moves before you begin to go. You could be 2 cars behind, the light turns green, you just step on the gas, but the guy in front of you didn't see the light turn green, so he waited a minute. And now you've hit the back of his vehicle and you have a rear end collision with a possible citation involved to the driver. Stop signs. Stop signs are there for a reason. The old California rolling stop. How many is that? You look to your left, you're making a right hand turn, you look to your left hand side, you don't see a car, and you kind of roll through the stop sign. Probably not a good idea, as the officer is sitting right across the street watching for that, and you get written up for rolling through a stop sign. Come to a complete stop before you make those turns. Again, it gives you time to gather your thoughts to make the proper decision. Maybe you thought a car wasn't going so fast. You stop for a second, you take a second look and realize, wow, he is traveling fast. I better wait. So now the weaving will fall into the improper passing. So that's erratic lane changes, failure to control in your lane. That's kind of where that falls into play. Want to make sure that you're keeping track of your lanes. Now, we begun using Netrodyne a year or two ago. Found it very informative. We can go in and watch the cameras. We can look at drivers, see how steady they are within their lane. Are they going back and forth? Could that be an indicator that they're on the cell phone? We do not have our inward cameras turned on. Some companies do. We do not. So we can only trust that our drivers are not using their cell phones while they're driving. We have a very low incidence of cell phone violations being written. So we're thinking they're not. But failure to stay within your lane could be indicative of the driver being distracted or not paying attention to what doing, which could cause an accident if he's not paying attention. And it could be a precursor for the officer to pull you over just because you're not keeping your lane of travel, staying within the lines. You're weaving from side to side. Very common for officers to pull people over when the bars close. You're just not staying within your lane. You didn't cross the lines, but you're not staying steady within your lanes. Next thing you know, you get lit up, and his reason for pulling you over was because you were not able to stay in a straight line. So something very important to try to, keep all these things in mind. Just reinforce these facts to your drivers as you're getting closer to this Operation Safe Driver, because these are the things that the officers are going to be looking for. All right, this next one, really interesting from my perspective, is the correlation to crash risk. So really because I drive recklessly, how much greater of an increase does it mean that I'm going to have an accident? Well, statistics run the world. They run the insurance company. Accountants love them. Numbers guys love them. And there is a reason that they're used. And they found that a reckless driving conviction increases the driver risk of having a crash by 114%. That's a tremendously large amount. Inevitably, if you were to ask your driver, what do you think the correlation to crash risk would be under a particular conviction, he probably would not think it was that high. Just human nature. But it's really interesting to see that these numbers, how they correlate to the fact that you may have a crash because you're doing these things. Again, going back to what I just mentioned, the weaving, that failure of lane control conviction, that raises the percentage of the crash risk up to 83%, which is huge, just by failing to remain in your lane or have lane control while you're driving. Improper use of signal conviction. Now, surprisingly, it doesn't seem like a big deal at the moment, but I'm sure we've all been behind people who have failed to use their signal. Am I going left or right? their vehicle maybe is going slower than other vehicles. They don't put their hazards on. So now you find yourself running up on the back of that vehicle. Uh, Ironically, the improper use of signal really does have a large correlation to risk because of that particular item. And also, again, something to bring to your drivers. If you have an incident, if something's occurring, if you're on the freeway traveling 70 miles an hour, minding your own business, up ahead, because you should be aiming high and steering and keeping your eyes moving, you see the traffic is coming to a stop. There's no harm in putting your flashers on to warn the people behind you that something out of the ordinary is occurring. It makes them wake up. Something, they may be daydreaming, but they see your flashers go on and they wake up and go, what's going on that I may not be able to see because I'm following too close to the big truck in front of me. So there's no harm to put your flashers on in that event, just to give the person behind you a little bit more time to do the right thing. And then obviously using the proper signals when you decide to make a left or a right-hand turn is very important. And that goes in front too. You're in an intersection, use of the signals as people are coming towards you is a huge thing to keep in mind. Following too close, surprisingly, it doesn't rank higher. I would think that it would rank a lot higher. So only at 46%, only, we say only, but that's a huge problem following too close. It may show that maybe drivers are a little quicker to react than I thought, but I was kind of surprised that it's down there at that 46% versus a higher number. The speeding conviction, another kind of interesting correlation here. So a speeding conviction, the correlation to crash is about 45%. Ironically, if you're going greater than 15 miles an hour, it drops to 40%. So it seems as though the faster you go, the lower your correlation to crash risk by about 5%. Not quite sure what you could attribute that to. Maybe staying with the flow of traffic. I know there's been a lot of conversation over the years about different states with different speed limit structures. Trucks do 55, cars do 65. To this day, that debate still rages. But just found that interesting that seemingly the faster you go, that the lower the correlation there. Any moving conviction in general, and they didn't break that out into any specifics, but just in general, there's a 35% increase to crash risk. And then the last one's failure to obey a traffic control device, or failure to obey a traffic control or failure to obey a traffic control signal. That increases your risk from 25 to 30%. So not stopping at a stop sign. Maybe road construction signs, which opens a whole nother can of worms in terms of the severity of the penalties and the citations involved in road construction. So there's actually a total of 27 correlations in the crash likelihood, and I think I pulled this from ATRI, the American Transportation Research Institute. Not sure, but you could probably just Google that in, and I'm sure you can find it pretty easily. All right. Let's see this next slide. So this was pulled off of the 2023 results of last year's Safe Driver operation. Up the top 5 warnings and citations, tickets issued to commercial motor vehicle drivers. The blue number up here corresponds to table number 2, 383.51. So that gives you the ranking where they fell in terms of that. The black numbers are the rankings that this particular study came upon themselves. So we could see where speeding and other state and local driver regulations ranked as number 1. There were roughly 1,600 warnings, 1,400 for that. Although it kind of found a little bit, and the officers didn't seem as apt to write the ticket versus the warnings for speeding. And that may be due to the fact that the officer was trying to cut the driver's brakes, didn't want the speeding to enter. And then same thing, he kind of, state and local. Now, the state and locals could be anything from registration issues, no proof of insurance, size and weight violations, defective equipment. So, little kind of open for debate there what those violations were, but kind of the difference, the way that they switched here was kind of interesting. Another interesting thing here in the next one. So, failure to obey a traffic control device. The rankings on warning was number 2. The ranking on the 38351 is at a 5. Failure to obey traffic control, they wrote almost 700 warnings and yet only issued about 300 actual tickets or citations for that. Now, here's where the kind of visible thing here. Failure to wear a seatbelt ranks as number 3, 455 warnings, and yet 467 citations were written. So the officer's willingness to cut your brake on failure to wear a seatbelt is really not there. If you're not wearing a seatbelt, your chances are you're going to get a ticket. He's not going to give you a break on that. Everybody should know to wear their seatbelt, especially commercial motor vehicle drivers. In fact, according to FMCSA, roughly 14% of commercial motor vehicle drivers do not wear a seatbelt. For whatever reason, they feel more secure in a big truck. They don't think that anything's going to happen. The easiest question you can ask your driver if he pushes back on wearing a seatbelt is, have you ever tried to control a truck from the passenger side of the truck as you're rolling down a hill? Because you're not going to be able to hold on to their steering wheel and stay in your driver's seat if you go off the side of the road or have a major accident. So instead of getting in a big discussion with him, just ask him if he can drive, him or her, if they could drive from the passenger side of the truck, and chances are they're going to say no. And next one down here, we have texting. That's ranked as number 9, or listed as number 9 under the table. Texting using a handheld device, listed as number 4 on the warnings, and again 5 on tickets and citations. And you can see that there's a pretty close correlation there. Not a big difference in that number between warnings and citations. So again, everyone should know not to use their cell phone or text while they're driving the truck. So there's no excuse for using it. Officers are much less tolerant of that particular violation. And then improper lane change. You can see where the warnings are number 5, listed as number 3 on the table. 109 warnings and no citations listed next to it for whatever particular reason. Not sure why. Could be because of the severity of it. I'm not sure, but just an interesting thing there. So let's see how these numbers or these violations could impact your CSA scores. So under CSA, at 392, reckless driving greater than 15 miles an hour is worth 10 points under your CSA profile in CSA. Now keep in mind also, and I did a webinar back in the fall of last year, the prioritization preview program is currently in phase 2. And they're reviewing all the comments that were made. That comment section had closed out back in last May or June. They're trying to incorporate those things that are going to align in the new system, and they're also assessing the impact on other CSA areas. So again, that's going to be something that's coming down the road. Nobody knows when yet, but that will impact the look and the score of your CSA at the moment. But right now, we're still under the same system, and that same system has got a 1 through 10 point structure. So the greater than 15 is going to be 10 points. Again, 392.2R, reckless, going to be 10 points on there, about as high as you can get. Again, 392.82, cell phone use, and 392.2 is texting. And both of these are going to be big hitters. So all 4 of these are huge hits, as big as a hit as you can get. With the multiplier thrown in there of 3, you're going to have a 30. That 10 points is going to be multiplied by 3, giving you a 30 right off the bat, even for a single violation. If it's going to be a reckless, now the driver is going to have a citation for that, and he's going to have his first conviction. So that would mean that he'd only have one remaining of a similar conviction within 3 years before his CDL could be disqualified for 60 days. Then you move down here, 392.2 got it's a 5-point violation for lane change, and 392.2 following too closely is another 5-pointer. So if anyone wants to pull up the SMF methodology booklet, or if you'd like me to send it to you, feel free. I have can't remember what month, but it's a 2022 version. Not sure if they have an updated version yet. That'll give you all the information and all the upcoming updated information that you would need revolving around SMS and CSA. So again, you could reach out to me on that email. I'd be more happy to send you a copy of it if you don't have one or you'd like to get one. So let's get down to the next one. So how are we going to help our drivers prepare for this particular event? And keep in mind, it's a 5-day event. So this isn't going to be like the surprise break thing we had a few weeks ago where it was just a 1-day event. This is going to go on for 5 days. So make sure you let your drivers know that they need to be at the top of their game for at least 5 days, preferably 365 days. But for these particular 5 days, you really want to be on top of your game. So let's look at how we might try to help them. Now, for any of you that not sure were around 100 years ago, this might have been what the book of knowledge under the FMCSRs looked like. Kind of like something from the early 1900s. Well, today's version is just a bit better. Kind of looks something like that. Now that's the pocket book version. Just want to let everybody know I'm not a salesperson for J.J. Keller, but they are one of the more popular organizations that come up with this. We do use J.J. Keller exclusively for a lot of our stuff. They have a nice little pocketbook version that we give our drivers at orientation. It doesn't have all the regulations, but it does have the ones that really pertain to a driver's daily workday. So that's kind of the cover of that look. You could go into J.J. Keller. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to sell you a bunch of them if you aren't currently using them or if you'd like to use them. And again, it's a small pocketbook version, a great thing to get drivers, hand them out at safety meetings, whatever. But something that I think drivers who really care would appreciate. I know I did when I started driving 22 years ago, and these were given out, and I did find some really good information in these books. So. All right, so what can you as a carrier? So if we have carriers on here, great. If we have owner operators on here, great. But what can the carrier themselves do? So under 391.25, you do have to do an annual inquiry. Getting long in the presentation. I'll skip that word and just go your review of a driving record. So that is a thing that you need to do on an annual basis is look into a driver's record. So you might want to take a quick look and just make sure there's nothing in there that you might have missed or something that would draw your attention that you could address with the driver. If there is, talk to the driver and say, hey, Joe, remember back about 8 months ago, you had that speeding ticket that was 14 miles an hour and over? Make sure you try to improve that because this operation is coming up soon. Review any safety features that you as a carrier are currently using. Are you using cameras? Are you using some kind of tracking device? What do you have in place that you can go back and review to see if your drivers are prepared or if you can do something to help them be more prepared as this thing takes off in the next couple weeks. Review disciplinary records, if you have any related to past occurrences. And that kind of goes with the review of the driving record. Looking back, has there been any disciplinary occurrences on a particular driver? Did he receive a lane change violation ticket earlier this year or recently? It may be worth a phone call to that driver and say, hey, this occurred, could be a habit. Let's make sure that we don't continue this habit and try to improve upon that. Let's talk about training some support members. And by support members, I mean dispatch personnel. Really, the dispatcher probably is your first line of defense in the sense that your driver is talking to a dispatcher, most likely initially, for his daily dispatch. If problems are occurring, delivery problems, it's going to be the dispatcher that he calls. So bring your dispatcher into the loop and let him know, take a special interest in drivers when you're talking to them. Do you have any issues? Are you feeling as though you're being pushed to try to get from California to New York in 2 days? Is that going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. So really, as a company, especially if you're a large company, it's very difficult to keep track of all the drivers. Really, that the dispatcher is going to be your first line of defense in terms of getting a feel for what's going on in your driver's life. An understanding of the rules and regulations of 395 for the hours of service that drivers fall under. Make sure that your dispatchers are aware of the one where you're not supposed to set runs up that can't be done in a reasonable amount of time. Asking a driver to get from California to Chicago in a day is kind of not in that realm. That's not supposed to be asked or dispatched to the driver. So you hire a new dispatch person, maybe they're not involved in transportation, get them educated as to what you can and can't do. And then maintenance also. We want to include maintenance. Now, this is Operation Safe Driver, but keep in mind that a light out on a truck, and that's not to say that that's part of the driver's responsibility, but also if your trucks are going in for maintenance, that's part of the mechanics or the technician's job is to make sure these things are working. So bring them up to snuff on the 393 and 396. What's needed for safe operation and the inspection and repair and maintenance. Again, not all technicians have the same knowledge that a driver would have. I don't know if I had $1 for every tech that said I didn't know that, I'd be rich. And it's not necessarily their job to know that. Really, probably some of the best technicians are previous drivers because they've been on both sides of the fence and they kind of understand how they work together to get the job done. So let your maintenance people know that this is coming up also so that they can help the drivers be ready for this particular thing. And just this morning, and I want to throw this out there as an afterthought, just this morning I was on the FMCSA website and came across the Motor Carrier Safety Planner website. So for any of you who might be interested, you may already be aware of it. I just saw it this morning for the first time. Didn't quite get into it too much, not sure what it is, but it looks kind of interesting. And for anyone who is interested, you might want to go on it. Just go under FMCSA. It's called the Motor Carrier Safety Planner website. And you may be able to gain some value. I know they have a bunch of PDFs on different things, but it might be interesting. And I thought I'd throw that out there as I just saw it this morning. And again, I have a note to myself on this slide to mention the Brake Safety Week that'll be coming up in August 25th through the 31st. And then, so let's take a moment as kind of attendees of the webinar and say, well, what attributes could be considered the most critical to safe driving? So if I ask all the registrants to write down on a piece of paper what attributes you think are the most critical, if I have 100 people on this call, there's probably going to be 100 different answers. So don't take these as set in stone, but it's something worth thinking about. So let's look at the first one in vision. It seems like a given. I mean, if you can't see, you can't drive. But really, there's a whole lot more involved in vision. In terms of, like I mentioned now for the third time, possibly fourth time in this webinar, the aim high steering offered by the Smith system. You want to be looking ahead, keeping your eyes moving, looking around, using your mirrors every 5 to 8 seconds, seeing what's going on around you. So vision is a huge thing, and it doesn't mean the ability to just be able to see. It means to see and comprehend what you're seeing, to make the proper decisions and to prepare yourself for what might be occurring in the future. So I think vision might be a big one, and then you can expound on that vision further in talking with your drivers during safety meetings or even on one-to-one conversations in phone calls. Second one was awareness or focus. So you may have the best vision in the world. You may be aiming high and steering. You may be keeping your eyes moving. You may be doing all those things, but you're just not aware of what's going on. The vision is there, but the thought process isn't. And it may be because you're tired, you're upset, you're angry, you had a fight with your wife or girlfriend, you had a fight with your husband or boyfriend. It could be a number of different factors that involve your awareness. And with awareness comes focus too. Don't want to over focus on something, but you need to be focusing on the traffic ahead or the traffic to the sides of you, even the traffic behind you. You should be able, as a driver, you should be able to get a feel for the person behind you and whether or not they're paying attention, whether they're following too close, uh, just something that would give you a little bit of a heads up if something were to occur. I mentioned earlier about putting the flashers on, coming upon construction or a slowdown in traffic in front of you. If you were aware that the guy behind you had been following you too closely, that would be even more reason to use the hazards and more reason to increase your personal following distance so that you wouldn't have to come to a quick stop and then get rear-ended. And the third item that we can kind of talk about is anticipation. And that kind of falls into what I had mentioned right in the very beginning is what would you do if? What would you do if this car that's coming in on the merge, who is technically, he's the one that needs to merge, but what if he's not going to merge? What are you going to do? When did your anticipation of that event begin? Did it begin just now as that guy began to merge? When it should have begun a half a mile back? As soon as you could have seen that merge coming up, you should have begun to plan for somebody doing something unexpected because most of the time they do. It's I never really appreciated or never understood how drivers would say I didn't think they would do that. Um, I, I personally am not surprised at what anybody does anymore because people will do whatever they need to do with a complete disregard for traffic around them. So really your goal with anticipation is look at every scenario. What would how many, again, you can go on YouTube and find hundreds of videos of things flying out the back of a pickup truck, uh, wheels falling off of vehicles, tandems coming off of a tractor trailer. There's just example after example of things that you don't necessarily plan for, but really you need to pay attention to. And if that was going to happen, what would I do? Would I be able to go to the left? Would I be able to stop? Do I need to speed up? Do I need to speed up a little bit to get past that hazard or that emergency? It sounds counterintuitive, but for anybody who's ridden a motorcycle, that is something that's taught in the Motorcycle Safety Foundation is sometimes speeding up to get out of the way or get around something is better than trying to stop and avoid it. So really those three, and again, I'd like to think that maybe everybody jotted something down as they were sitting there just because that's what you do when you're on a webinar, kind of make notes and do little things with your pen or pencil. And it'd be kind of interesting to see what everybody had written down because like I said, we'll probably have hundreds of different things, but I thought those three covered a large portion of what we do on a daily basis and something that maybe a little bit of extra conversation with your drivers would help, bring that to the top of their mind as this comes closer to happening. All right, with that, I think we're going to close it up. I want to thank everyone very much for attending this webinar. I hope I gave you a couple little tidbits of information that you can help. And I forgot if Conrad mentioned, but we are going to offer, I think, a 5-question survey. It would really be helpful if you could spend just a few moments and help put down your thoughts and fill it out. It would give us a little bit of insight as to what we can do to improve our webinars in the future. And if you have any specific ideas, in fact, the year-end compilation came from someone who suggested that we have a year-end thing put together of stuff that occurred through the year or things that are coming up. So if anyone has any ideas or any specific areas they'd like approach in future webinars, please feel free to put those down there, send them back to us, and we'll see what we can do. So again, thank you very much. And I hope to see you on our next webinar sometime in early August, I think it's going to be. We'll keep you posted.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, and so I know we're creeping up on that 3 o'clock marker here. This was scheduled for an hour, but I just wanted to check and if you have any questions, you're free to type them in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you if you want to go that route. So I'll just give it a second here to see if anyone has any questions. And kind of while we wait here, I'll and just yeah, and I want to just follow up on what John said that in the coming days you'll follow I'll send out a follow-up email containing a link to a recording of today's webinar, as well as some useful PDF resources that John gathered that will help you prepare your drivers for Operation Safe Driver Week. And then, as John mentioned, that survey will be also included in that email. We really appreciate your feedback. And then, of course, John's email will also be included in that email in case you have any questions down the road. But it doesn't look like we have any questions coming through. I guess you did a pretty thorough job, John, as always. So again, if anybody wants to learn more about AIM services, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help, and stay tuned for announcements regarding future webinars. And other than that, that's all we have today. So thank you everyone for your time, and thank you, John, for taking us through yet another very informative webinar.
thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.